Hi there. This is my presentation on general systems theory. I just realized I spelled that wrong. I'm sorry. Um, so, general systems theory is the idea that every element within a system is interrelated and impacted by every other element. And there are several ways to demonstrate this, but within a school setting, schools have the goal of um, adapting to external factors, policies, society, the goings on of what the world around them is, and adapting to that. And then also internal integration. So, what does that mean for them? Sustaining day to day activities, and then also taking the outside information and implementing what they need to prepare their students um, within their walls. And general systems theory is the idea that the whole is greater than the sum of its parts. So the each element, like if you look within a family, um, you have the Smith family with 2 adults and 3 children. Each one of those members has a relationship with each of the other members, and that relationship impacts every other relationship. And so um, one thing can't happen to just one member of that family without impacting all the other dynamics of the family. And that's just a small system example. There's several ways that as social workers we demonstrate general systems theories depending on the system that we're talking about. And so the EcoMap is one way to do that. Um, whereas we see the smaller system or entity in the middle and all of the things that are surrounding that entity to have influence. A genogram is a much more complicated example that really, it looks really pretty, but really shows each of the individual dynamics, the positives, negatives, the things that you want to work on, the things that are strong, um, and can get really detailed. And the ecological map is the one that kind of visually makes the most sense to me in terms of the smallest part is impacted by every other system that it's within. And then the larger systems are impacted by the smaller systems within that system. So it's growing out and coming back in as far as influence goes. From a social worker perspective, um, it's important that no matter what the situation we're dealing with is, that we understand the importance of human relationships. And um, and so from the National Association of Social Worker Code of Ethics, understanding that means social workers understand that relationships between and among people are an important vehicle for change. Social workers engage people as partners in the helping process. That's the part I'm focusing on, the helping process. Social workers seek to strengthen relationships among people in a purposeful effort to promote, restore, maintain, and enhance the well-being of individuals, families, social groups, organizations, and communities. So the example that I'm going to use is the social work perspective in uh, um, applied to zero tolerance of vaping in the educational system. So as I'm working in schools and having kids in the school systems and having friends with kids, vaping is a huge, rampant problem, apparently. Um, and and so, of course, schools can't just sit back and not do anything about it, especially when those activities are happening on campus. But the way that they are currently doing it, which I think, as I prepared this, I think there was some legislative change to what can be expected if you are caught vaping. Sorry. So the current system, as I understand it, is pretty much zero tolerance. If you are caught vaping on school campus, you are sent to um, the alternative school, whatever that is in your community. Around here, it's a DAEP. Um, so for whatever reason, a youth is engaging in vaping, and then they get caught doing a fairly typical teenage activity. And then the punishment is pretty severe, and they most likely will miss school, miss grades, get behind, and uh, that will be a pretty good bump in the road for their educational career, social career, just life advancement. So, how that looks on a systems perspective is, um, in the center is the smallest entity, which is the individual student. And teenage brains aren't fully formed, they make dumb decisions. So a kid ends up vaping or doing something similar on a school campus. And with the zero tolerance rule, their individual school, no matter how professionals feel about it, have to comply with the school district policies, which is zero tolerance, and um, vaping equals severe punishment, um, expulsion, alternative school, what have you. And then um, that impacts the greater justice system and society. So you take the individual and they make a mistake, and then the school has their policies based on the school district policies. So the school says you have to leave the school and go to the alternative school. And at the alternative school, the student falls behind in their lessons and their grades. They also typically get labeled as, that kid that went to the alternative school or the bad kid, all those things. And it really sets a trajectory for their life and their either entry into the justice system because of a pretty good derailment in their education or kind of a different trajectory for their life, whether they're able to get into college, how that affects their self-esteem, their self-worth, what they think they can accomplish in life. It's just really an ineffective consequence to a fairly minor offense. I have a social worker friend who, um, as her son was diagnosed with ADHD, and he did not like taking medication, but within the school system, he was on a plan in which he agreed to take his medication. So the individual mom wasn't alone in encouraging her child to take medication and supporting her mental health. She had full wraparound system that supported her and supported him in maintaining his mental health and his education. And then he got caught vaping on school grounds and was sent to, they were in Virginia at the time, but their equivalent of the DAEP. And she said from that point on, it just was one thing after another. The DAEP wasn't particularly interested in their uh, various plans of behavior or educational attainment. Um, it was just punishment. And then he became disinterested in school. He got off his medication and he was not willing to go back on. And then he graduated and still refuses to be on medication, still refuses to go to college, and things like that. And she was just like, it was just we were on a good path. It was a hard path, but it was a good path. And it was just so derailed for a very minor offense. So that's kind of a real world example of how that goes. And he's not in jail, but he kind of feels like he's the bad kid. And so he's not attending college. He does have employment, which is great, but she knows that he's just capable of whatever he wants to do, but he just has been told by the school system that he's not. So, um, as far as social workers go, um, if our job is to engage people as partners in the helping process, we have to be able to advocate for students on a school level, school district level, and policy level in terms of the nature of the offense versus the consequence, and the research that shows that that's, the harshest punishment doesn't do any good in terms of long-term outcomes, but supporting each individual child and student as an individual with unique needs, and making an individual plan for them has much better outcomes. And then these are my references: the Nassau Code of Ethics and our textbook by Alan Mears.